Hey folks, how's it going? This is Jason here, and I thought today would be a good day for a little behind the scenes update. And you're not seeing me because you can't flip the image around while you're shooting a video. So maybe Apple, you could add that feature. Alright, so one thing I've been working with is getting the material length right. And the way I've been doing that in the past, I've actually been using the edge of this tool here as a work stop. So every time the material gets pushed out, I use this tool to bump up against it because the machine's very accurate, so this position is going to be very accurate, and then I push the material back just a little bit to make sure it's always in the same spot. Now the problem with that is when you open and close the chuck and it clamps and unclamps, it can actually move the material back and forth. So that's introducing some inaccuracy if it pulls the material back and doesn't push it back forwards the same amount. So a good way to overcome that is with a spring stop. So a lot of the times, say this tool would be loaded with a little spring-loaded plunger, and when the material feeds out, it hits the plunger and it stops the work at a certain point. I'm not able to do that because every time the machine bar feeds, this is like a little waste part, and so the machine feeds in a new bar when this bar is finished, and it's got to be able to push this out of the way, and it's got to be able to fall off, and then the new material's got to be able to feed out behind it and then get clamped. But if you have a stop in the way, that can't happen, and it all just bangs together. So this little gizmo, and if my camera will focus, that would help, is a spring stop that I came up with on my own, and it's actually this little guy right here. It's just a bent piece of welding wire that I've wedged into the tool holder. And so basically I can bring this little bar up and it acts as a spring, and then the work can push against that. It doesn't take very much force to keep this piece of material in place, but the good thing about this spring stop is that you can force the material past it and it just springs out of the way, and so this would fall off and then the new piece comes up and touches the stop. So that was pretty awesome. But I've been having one other problem with this setup, and that is when the machine comes in, where are we here? Well, the machine comes in to cut off each part, the tool cuts through and drops it off, but what happens is it makes a big long coil of material like this, particularly in the titanium. It doesn't like to break, and what had been happening is the material was getting kind of threaded through and stuck behind one of these coolant hoses, but on this tool that I'm using right here. And so the material would get piled up and stuck, and it would get caught on my spring stop, and then the material would get pulled and it would actually bend the spring stop out of the way to the point where the material was just missing it and not acting as a stop. So what I did, I scratched my head about this for a while. I just took this little clear sheet of polycarbonate, and it's just a little rectangle, and I wedged it behind this coolant hose, and then this is just a magnet which you can just slide around, but this is a bolt head, and I just put the magnet on there and it holds this whole thing in place. And now when the chip comes off, it runs behind the stop and hits this little piece. Instead of going behind that hose, it just falls down into the machine. So that's pretty awesome. So far it's worked great. I just came up with that today. And I've run about 60 parts through it, and it works about 95% of the time. But I still have to stop the machine every once in a while to check on it and make sure that those chips are getting cleared out. Alright, so that's it. Thanks for watching.